Welcome to the Worth It Practice podcast. I am your host, Dr. Leah Kleonsky, and today I'm going to talk about something a little bit vulnerable. I'm going to talk to you about the times when I get overwhelmed and what I do when that happens to me. Because guess what? It's happening to me right now. So in today's episode, I'm going to walk you through why I think the overwhelm is happening. I'm going to walk you through how I'm leveraging AI to help me figure out the overwhelm and just the general insights and my plan that I'm going to use personally to turn this around for me in the new year. So I hope that's helpful because I assume overwhelm happens to everybody at some point or another, even if things are generally going well for you. So you've heard me talk a couple of times on this podcast about how much I love being a group practice owner, and that's completely true. I absolutely love it. And I love this new podcast, the Worth It Practice podcast. It's so much fun. And I love the Educated Parent podcast that I run as well for my group practice. And I love the consulting and I love the therapy work that I do. But most of the time, I love my job. Recently, like over the past, I'd say 3 or 4 weeks, I've started to feel a lot more overwhelmed than I typically do. When I notice this in myself, when I'm like, okay, I'm not feeling like I'm having as much fun. Instead, I'm saying to myself things like, wow, I don't really want to do this task, or I'm putting the kids to bed and I'm going back to work, but not in an excited way, in a I couldn't accomplish everything kind of way. What really inspired me to record this podcast is because I worked most of the day on Saturday, and that's very unusual. I usually have my weekends completely free. So I'm going to talk you through why I think I'm more overwhelmed, and then the ChatGPT use that really helped. So here's what's going on for me. I'm just going to pull back the curtain. I spent about 2 months being really sick this year. So I had COVID in August, and then I got better from COVID, and then I got the flu, and then I got pneumonia. And I was sick with pneumonia for about a month before I got a second round of antibiotics. And immediately as I was recovering from pneumonia, I went on a long planned vacation. So I came back from that vacation feeling really happy about going to Europe, but basically walking back into the midst of a bunch of fall-related tasks, end of year, Q4 tasks, some of which I anticipated and some of which I didn't. So here I am in Q4, which is always just a busy time of year, planning for the things that need to get ready for 2026. So this means making sure that all of my contracts look good, which, let's face it, contracts, small kinds of little things I have to do, not my favorite thing to do. We're planning on switching our EHR, so that takes a lot of prep. I'm realizing that we need more admin help immediately, not in a couple months like I thought we did, but right away. That's a whole nother level of thinking that I didn't expect to be doing right now. So it's like these end of year things. I always meet with every therapist in the practice every quarter so I can check in, see how they're doing. So all of those meetings are piling up. So I have all of those things going on, keeping me really, really busy, in addition to the marketing that I normally do for the practice. And the marketing I normally do for the practice has involved a lot more networking this year. That's because that in-person networking and relationship building is really what I can see in our data and what I know from the business. That's what's yielding the greatest return on investment for bringing in new clients, which is harder this year than it was last year. Like, for example, this week, I'm giving 2 different presentations at a school. I expect those to take up 2 half days of my time. That's a lot of in-person networking, and a lot of things like that have been going on. So the burden on my actual time has been going up significantly. Luckily, Educated Parent, that podcast, it has a system, but I still interview people, I still record episodes. So that's going on in the background. And of course, I just launched this podcast, the Worth It Practice podcast. And when you launch a new podcast, it takes up time in weird ways at the very beginning. The YouTube verification, for some reason, taking much longer than it should, and me having to problem solve a lot. Some weird tech thing will go wrong. So there just tends to be way more back and forth that evens itself out after a while. So I've had like all these kinds of new things going on in addition to the work I already do. do when things are going smoothly. And in addition to all of that, on my family end of things, my son started to need to go to physical therapy. So I lost a morning a week there. My kids have their dentist appointments, their doctor's appointments, all their school events, like Halloween stuff. So I'm in this situation where I'm like, suddenly I have more things to do than I have time to do them. Tasks that I think are easy end up being much harder. Things that I think will take 5 minutes take a couple hours, and I don't like that. When this happens to me and I'm noticing this overwhelm, to me that means that I need to figure some things out. The first thing I need to figure out is how much of this is just temporary. Like there are just seasons in business where you're like, yeah, I'm gonna work too much, right? I'm doing a bunch of new things. It happens to be a busy time. It's not permanent. I'm just gonna have to work more than usual. And then it will fade back to being easy. So that's one thing I wanted to figure out. The second thing I needed to figure out is what are the things that are probably going to stay this way? Because those are the things that I need to create a system to manage. Because doing what I'm doing right now forever, that's the kind of thing that can make you feel burnt out. One of the frustrating things for me, if I tell anyone that I'm temporarily overwhelmed, is the first thing that they tend to say to me is, oh, Leah, it's because you're doing too much. Maybe you've took on too many tasks. You need to be doing less. I always find this really frustrating because I've never found that to be true for me. Like the problem is almost never that I've been too ambitious. Like, oh, I'm doing too much in that sort of a way. It's usually that my systems aren't working well. Because if my systems are working well and I'm able to focus on the things I really want to focus on, then I'm really good at not overscheduling. So I always find that frustrating. So if you realize you're overwhelmed and someone immediately tells you it's because you're quote unquote doing too much, maybe that's true, but also you know yourself. And I feel like it's a very easy thing for people to say to women immediately, like with the nicest, kindest intentions. But I'm like, if I were a man, would that be what you would say to me? Or would you say, oh, I think you need an additional assistant? So that's something I always kind of, like I'll hear it and I'll ask myself about it and I'll like truly question whether that's real. And I've never yet found that to be the actual case for me personally, but everybody's different. Okay, so I have all these things going on. How am I going to think about it? How am I going to problem solve? And I thought, oh, I have this tool, ChatGPT. I'm going to use ChatGPT in my favorite way, which is meaning that I use it as a strategist who can think about things very rationally because it's an AI and it's not me. So I just want a place to put this information and then have it analyze potential. ChatGPT in these situations is as good as the prompt that you put into it. That's just how it works. And I always like to tell ChatGPT who it is for me when I'm having these sorts of discussions with it. So in this case, I pulled up my chat actually for Worth It. I've been feeding it information about this podcast for a really long time. I've been feeding it information about Thriving Child Center, PCIT experts, like it knows my businesses pretty well. So I said to ChatGPT, here's the situation, I need a consultant. So you are a high-level CEO consultant and small business strategist who works with owner-led service-based businesses in the $1 to $2 million range. So I'm just giving it this information. This is who you are. I said, what else do I need to tell you to make you good at helping me problem solve my schedule? So then I added things to the prompt. Like I let it know that it specializes in operational efficiency, strategic prioritization, delegation, and systems design for sustainable growth. And then I asked it again, what more should I be defining you as so that you can really help? And it offered to give me like empathy. And I realized I don't need empathy, right? Because I don't have the perception that I'm overwhelmed. It's not one of these things where I have a manageable workload, but I feel overwhelmed. This is a situation where I have too many tasks for my time. So I don't want that. I want strategy. So I let it know that. I was like, I don't need empathy coaching. I just need high-level strategy to help me make better decisions and execute more efficiently. And then I turned it into the feature where you can actually talk to it and have a back and forth conversation. And I just started telling it everything I just told you. I started describing all of these different things that are going on and which things I think are long term and which things I think are short term, and how I've been managing my time up until now and what's working and what's not working and what the carryover is. So I just gave it tons and tons of data. And I asked it, I said, enough about my businesses so that you can answer these questions. And because again, I've been feeding it information for, 4 months or so, it was like, yeah, I know about that. So the result was really interesting. One thing ChatGPT talked to me about was batching my time more efficiently. For example, one suggestion it gave me that it had not occurred to me before is that I should take several days and do all of my meetings with all of the therapists who work in the practice on those days, instead of letting them just book into all these random times. Just put on my CEO hat, be like, I'm going to meet with everyone on these days. These are the time slots available. And then that task would be over, instead of I'm recording a podcast episode and then I'm meeting with so-and-so and then I'm trying to answer this other question for another person. So time batching, but in a way I hadn't considered it before. I also asked ChatGPT to prioritize what it thought my goals should be. I asked ChatGPT about how permanent and long-term it thought some of the goals were and what would happen if I didn't change my structure at all, but just waited for the new year for things to get a little bit easier. So I just had it run a bunch of scenarios for me. And in the end, what I realized is that most of the stressors are very short-term, one-time sorts of things. You only have to set up the Worth It podcast one time. I only have to really redo these contracts right now. Hopefully my son will be out of physical therapy in another 6 to 8 weeks. So a lot of the things that are taking up huge amounts of time are things that are going to end very, very soon. And if I just wait it out until January, those problems will just naturally be over. And that's kind of a relief. Sometimes just being like, oh, I don't actually have to solve this problem. Because frankly, then solving the problem of being overwhelmed becomes another thing that makes you overwhelmed. So that was a relief. The other thing I realized is that in January, I need to really do a redo of my systems and boundaries. And one thing I need to make sure is with this new admin position that we need to add, that hours of that time, probably 5 hours of that time a week, maybe more, need to become executive assistant for me. I need somebody to start coordinating my schedule, making sure I'm answering all my emails, making sure I'm going to all of the meetings that I want to go to, making sure that I'm keeping track of everyone that I'm meeting with. Those sorts of tasks are really hard for me. And at this point, I need to outsource them to another human whose job it is to pay attention to that part of my schedule. And that makes a lot of sense. It's something I sort of knew was going on in the background, but this conversation with ChatGPT helped it come to the forefront. Now, there are some things that ChatGPT and I did not talk about that I knew were going on and realized, basically AI is not good for everything, right? It can't pick up on all the subtleties. For example, I don't know if it would have told me without me prompting it that a lot of my problems were short term, right? I knew that on some level anyway, so I was asking it to help me strategize through that lens. But if I'd had a complete gap of knowledge in that, I don't know that ChatGPT would have noticed and helped me out with it. So that's kind of an interesting thing about ChatGPT. It's also a bit of a yes man. I wonder if I could have led it down a path to be really unhelpful, if I had just gotten it to agree with me over and over about certain things that didn't make sense. So I'm always suspicious. But it really did help me to frame some problems that I'm having. And I do appreciate some of the scheduling batching ideas that I hadn't thought of before. So this is how you can use ChatGPT as a tool. So to recap, part of my plan is to hire an executive assistant to manage my schedule because that will take a huge mental load off. And it will mean that I'm not worrying about double booking myself for appointments and I can just keep better track of everything. So I need to outsource that. I already knew it, but now I'm going to do it more aggressively. It also reassured me that, hey, a lot of these problems are just going to go away by January. This is just that season in business and of the year. So I can be a little bit too busy for a period of time and then later go back to an easier rhythm where I work all of these new things into my schedule. The third thing is it gave me some really good ideas about how to reorganize my schedule so that I don't get to this point again as easily. Again, this happens to everybody, right? There are always seasons where things are just a little bit more overwhelming, but having a plan for them makes them feel so much better. and also helps you prevent burnout or resentment towards the commitments that you have. And I think the real thing that I really hold on to in myself is that I know myself really well. I know when I'm really taking on too much, and I know when I just need to reorganize things. I also know that I work best when I listen to my own creativity. For example, if I feel deeply in the mood to record a podcast, inspired to say something, like actually I did when I decided to record this today, it's just important to me to sit down and record, as long as I don't have a meeting or something else scheduled into that time. Like, I need to act on my own motivation to do things. And I recommend that you do that as well. You can use ChatGPT as a sounding board for ideas or as a way of organizing your ideas. If you decide to do that, tell it who it is first so it can actually be helpful to you. Know yourself best. Know how you work. Make systems that work best for you and recalibrate them if necessary. Everybody gets overwhelmed sometimes, even people who aren't normally overwhelmed. And if that's happening to you, it might be a season or it might be something that you can problem solve. It's just part of how it is as a business owner now and then. But even just telling you all of this is sort of therapeutic. So thank you for listening to me. I hope these systems are helpful to you. I hope it's helpful to you to hear how I am working through this when it happens to me as well, because there's just no way to have it together all the time, every single day. If you're enjoying this, if this is helpful to you, go ahead and give me 5 stars, share it with a friend, and try out some of these systems yourself. And let me know how you're feeling about them and how they are benefiting you, or anything that you wish I were still talking more about. I'm happy to give you any solutions that I have. Have a wonderful day. I will talk to you next week.